Hello everyone, Martian Blobfish here. As some of you may know, PowerSoul Zeke and I have created a community event called Jack Month. Taking place from November to December 3rd, it's a time to celebrate the Jak and Daxter series. Part of the event will be scheduled YouTube videos, and since I've got a YouTube channel, I might as well throw my hat into the ring, right? I've always wanted to be a game designer. The thought of tinkering with both the game's world and mechanics has always been alluring to me, and since Jak and Daxter is one of my favourite franchises, I've got a lot of concepts taking place in this universe. I've decided to make my Jak Month video about these concepts, so I'm going to share a bunch of them here. You'll all be able to vote on which concepts you find most interesting, and the highest voted concept will be the one I'll be covering for the event. These here are timelines that connect the existing games with my own concepts. Each square will have an icon representing what game or concept it is, and they'll be surrounded by a coloured border. Each colour means something different. White means either I'm currently working on the concept, or it's already been shared. They'll become more common in future voting videos. Blue borders are for spin-off concepts. These are games that either split off mechanically, or don't follow the main plot of the series. Even though I only plan on sharing one concept during Jak Month, this category gets a separate vote. After both concepts are shared, I'll make another voting video. Green borders are for reimaginings of existing games, or entirely new concepts. Yellow means the concept adds onto an existing game and won't change anything drastically, like a remake. Orange is for existing games. These are purely here to make the timelines make sense. Magenta borders are for concepts that contain spoilers for other concepts. You'll be seeing less of these as I make more of these videos. Now, before I start talking about these concepts, here's a disclaimer. None of the concepts and art you see here is final. Not only are some of these icons and names jokes, but a lot of these concepts are in early stages and are subject to change. Also, these concepts won't actually be games. Not only do I not have access to the Jak and Daxter IP, but I don't have the manpower or knowledge to develop any of these concepts. Now that I've gotten that out of the way, let's begin. First off, let's get the existing games out of the way. There we go. Wait a minute, we seem to be missing a game. Jak and Daxter: The Precursor Legacy Excavated. The first game is the only 3D collectathon platformer in the entire series, and it's kinda short. After reading the design bible, I was enamored with everything that hadn't made it into the original game. So in order to remedy the short length of Jak 1, I think it'd be fitting if there was a remake that adds the content initially planned. Maybe I'll add in some of my own ideas too. Jak and Daxter: The Old World. This particular project has been long in development. It's also one of the most complete out of all of my Jak and Daxter concepts. However, I plan on sharing this concept on Xenobyte's channel through his Fan Theory series. After I've shared it on his channel, I'll make it an option in a later voting video for people who want a more controlled and in-depth look. It's a sequel to Jak 1 in an alternative timeline where only the first game is canon, where Jak and friends explore the Old World, a place which is full of eco-sensitive people under the rule of the Precursors and the Prime Sages. That was until a catastrophe involving a new yet familiar eco wiped out most of the inhabitants. Sage Quest, an action RPG where you become a sage. Have any of you played Diablo or Titan Quest? Well, this concept is inspired by those games, except the classes are based off of different types of eco. Two examples would be A. Blue Eco, which should be akin to the Storm Mastery with potent elemental damage, and B. Green Eco, which would be like the Nature Mastery with a focus on pets and supportive abilities. Sadly, this concept is over-reliant on the ecosystem established in the Old World, so it contained heavy spoilers for that concept. Two Brothers, a story-driven game about two brothers. Yes, the name is a Rick and Morty reference. Despite tying into the story of the Old World, the connection is loose enough to where I'd be able to talk about it without spoilers. The concept takes place in the Old World before the calamity that led to its destruction. The characters follow the twins who are born with strange abilities. One of them is extremely talented at channeling eco, and is able to achieve sage-level abilities, despite technically not being a sage. The other is almost immune to the effects of eco altogether. The Old World's hierarchy favours the most powerful eco channelers. Because of this, the twins have been separated, and the first brother's given almost the same level of influence as the Precursors themselves. The second is almost forgotten. Jak and Daxter: The Ancient War. This one's ironically one of the least developed concepts. Part of the reason is the Old World goes so in depth into the ecosystem, there's not much wiggle room anymore. One thing I wanted to explore though was an idea I had for a conflict between the Precursors and an ancient race of creatures that once ruled over the world. That was until the Precursors had taken over and massacred the beasts. The story would be about Jak and Daxter having to decide to either side with the Precursors, who had previously helped them, or to side with the remnants of this almost extinct species. I'm kinda disappointed with this cover honestly. It doesn't give a proper sense of scale for these ancient behemoths. They don't quite look how I imagine they should. Using concept art limits your options, so I'll try drawing it myself next time. Jak and Daxter Level Maker. If it wasn't obvious enough already, I really like Jak 1's gameplay and genre, but why step it more when we can have infinite Jak and Daxter platforming goodness? I'm not sure if this would be DLC to the Ancient War or its own thing, but basically the dynamic duo end up unearthing an old research station from the Precursors, who've been experimenting with interdimensional travel. In the lab you'll be able to create levels, and Jaks from other dimensions will be able to play through them. You'd also have access to items and abilities from the entire series, regardless if they're even from the same timeline. New collectathon concept in the original continuity. There's a consensus in the community that the start of Jak 2 takes place fairly soon after Jak 1's ending. It's implied, but we don't really know what happened between the two games. So this concept will be about Jak finding the Rift Rider, and I'll be injecting some of the themes and plot points from Jak 2 into Jak 1's gameplay. Ironically, this concept will contain spoilers for Jak 2. Oops. Other things I plan on exploring are new eco types, how different groups were able to unknowingly prepare for the Metalhead onslaught, as well as exploring what the characters did after the events of the first game. For example, did Willard and Gordy end up mining the crystal? How did being kidnapped affect the sages? And what does the fisherman do with all his fish? All important questions, I know. Jak 3 Reimagining. A wise man once said, Jak 3 bad. Jokes aside, there's some truth to this conclusion. Jak 3 is a good game, but there are problems, and honestly there's a lot of choices the creators made that I don't agree with. Guns like the Beam Reflector completely ruin the flow of combat and overshadow other weapons like the Wave Concussor and Mass Inverter, which aren't even given the appropriate situations to be useful anyway. Then there's the abundance of enemy factions. In Jak 2 there were 2 enemy factions, simple and clean, but in 3 there's what, 5? 3 of them are working together, and the group being touted as the biggest threat isn't in play until late game. It's kind of a mess. Despite the changes that I want to make, I don't want to uproot the game entirely. People really like this game, and for the most part the pieces that are here are great. So this reimagining will follow the same story beats as Jak 3, to keep both versions canonical with my other concepts. Jak and Daxter, The Lost Frontier Reimagining. A lot of Jak fans don't think The Lost Frontier is a good Jak game. I agree, but I think there's a lot of great ideas in the game despite the poor execution. This concept hopes to take those ideas and tie them into the world in a way that makes more sense, as well as offering better solutions for some of the more lackluster gameplay elements. I also have some ideas on how to change the lore behind the Brink. Not only will it become much more important, tie into multiple of the existing games, but the cause of the land's destruction will determine the path of the story going forward. I would recommend choosing this over the Jak 4 concept, but it'd be a crime to look a concept like that behind this one, so chances are this concept will be spoiled. Jak 4. For years fans have been clamouring for a 4th installment in this series, since Jak 3 left a lot of questions unanswered. The Lost Frontier and X didn't really answer any of these questions, and their plots were completely disconnected with the main story. This concept doesn't really answer all these questions. I want to stay far away from the Mar debacle until later, but this concept does go further into exploring the precursors. The attack from the Darkmakers had devastated Jak's world, and the precursors are taking any means necessary in order to finally put a stop to their corrupted brethren. Jak and Daxter are tasked with exploring the world to find candidates for Prime Sages. You may recognize them from the old world concept. Prime Sages' bodies are made up entirely of their respective eco. It's incredibly hard to become a Prime Sage, and they're very powerful. There's also a mysterious new character, Cyborg. He's fiercely loyal to the precursors, and seems to know more than he's letting on. Jak and Daxter, the House of Mar. After the events of Jak 4, Jak and Daxter go back in time to search for Mar. However, during their visit, there's a massive Metalhead invasion, and they end up needing help from multiple of Jak's ancestors in order to save the city. This concept is rather story heavy, so going too into detail could easily lead to spoilers, not only for my other concepts, but this one too. It's also quite well developed, which is impressive considering how tightly it's connected to my Jak 4 and 5 concepts. Is that a bad thing? Eco Fortress, a team-based eco shooter. In one of the Jak fan theory videos from Xenobyte's channel, the Bork brothers were talking about a co-op campaign in the style of Call of Duty. Naturally, I started thinking about eco and what it would be like if each class represented a different kind of eco. What? I'm not obsessed with eco. That's ridiculous. Lore-wise, this takes place alongside my Jak 4 concept. The Precursors are creating an army to lead against the Darkmakers and injecting them with different kinds of eco to increase their effectiveness in combat. This would actually play more like Team Fortress 2, hence the icon joke. 2 examples of classes would be Red Eco, which I'd imagine would play very similarly to Reinhardt from Overwatch, and Yellow Eco, which would be like the soldier from TF2. Anyone who doesn't understand why needs to look up rocket jumping. Jak 5. Yeah, that's right, this concept takes place in space. My Jak 4 and 5 concepts used to be one and the same, but I realised kinda late that not only would it be way too long, but it was also rather jank having about half the concept take place in space, so I split them up. This does make Jak 4 less grand, but it's been so long since the series had a mainline entry, it just made more sense to keep things closer to home. Basically what I'm leading up to is this concept is my vision for a grand finale to the series. The plan would be to answer all the big questions as satisfyingly as I can, but still leave questions lingering so the fans would have something to talk about. Nothing too major though. Despite being a major talking point, the Is Jak Mar theory was way too divisive for my liking. The progression would be similar to Ratchet and Clank's. Jak and Daxter will be jumping between planets in a galaxy-wide adventure in search of the Darkmakers' homeworld, as well as anything that could give them an edge during the final encounter. Mascot Mashup, a crossover with Ratchet and Sly Cooper. PlayStation Move Heroes is a weird game. It's not terrible, but considering it's a celebration for Sony's PS2 mascot platformers, it seems odd and unfitting they'd go for a PlayStation Moves minigame collection. This is actually more of a Ratchet concept than a Jak one. Notice how Ratchet's in the center, but it technically counts as a Jak concept too. Basically, there's a point in the universe where it's extremely weak, which makes it an optimal place for interdimensional travel. While it's active, everything's contained within the network because it's so fragile that it could go supernova. Ratchet, Jak, and Sly manage to get locked into this network, and each have different motives to close it. But there's someone else who wants to keep the gates open, and our three heroes need to take this character down in order to save themselves. That's all the concepts I've got so far. For a reminder, here are the concepts you can vote for, each in their respective categories. You may be wondering how to vote. In the comment section I've got a pinned message, and I'll leave a bunch of replies with the different concepts you're able to vote for. Like the comments with your favourite concepts to vote for them. I'd also recommend not voting for every option in a given category, that would make your vote obsolete. I'm interested in seeing what concepts will come out on top, but I've got a feeling I know which ones will win. If you want to keep up with the content made for the event, subscribe to the Jak Month YouTube channel, and follow the Jak Month Twitch and Twitter accounts. If you want to be in either of the event schedules, join the Discord. All of these are linked in the description below. Also, adding hashtag Jak Month to your tweets will get them retweeted, and adding the hashtag to your YouTube videos will have them added to a playlist in the Jak Month YouTube channel. It'd be nice if you subscribe to Power Zeke's channel as well as mine. We've put a ton of effort into this event, and we're really excited to see what the community can come up with. Thanks for watching.